Okay, welcome Chad Copher to Playfly Playmakers. I've been waiting for this one, Chad. So glad to have you here. Welcome to the podcast, and we're going to get into some fun topics today.
It's great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So for our audience, Chad is actually better known as Kof. So you may hear me flip in and out of Chad and flip to Kof. But we've known each other for quite a while. Just a couple short decades, really. Chad, actually, why don't we start away from business and get into a little bit about you personally. And for those that can't tell, Chad sits at 6'7" and 200 something pounds.
Yeah.
Right. And played defensive end at University of Illinois back in the day. So why did you end up taking a college experience of being a student athlete into a career in sports, just besides loving playing? Like how did you find your way in?
I played in college for the University of Illinois, and then signed free agent with the Colts, and was on the practice squad for a while, and then went into the Arena League for a couple of years trying to get back in the NFL, and it just didn't work out. And saw a lot of my friends progressing in their career and started to feel like I was missing the boat, and that I needed to start the next phase of my life if football wasn't going to be it. And at the time, to your earlier point, I was 6'7", 310 pounds or something like that. And I took a first job running tile warehouses. And every day I would go in the back and yell at people about what was happening and what was going on. And ultimately, while I was kind of progressing in that career and they had given me my own warehouse to run, it wasn't something that I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. One, kind of managing people in that style. And then number two, there's only so much interest I had in tile and in general and home remodeling. So I switched over, and someone that I knew and had played football with at the time was selling radio. And I went into radio selling Bears and Blackhawks and Bulls radio way back in the day, and then transferred over to what was then Fox Sports. And we've had a few names over the years. And really the piece that excited me about it and what's kept me 20 plus years in the industry is I love the fact that you have to know so much about and get eyesight into so many different industries. I know a little bit and enough to be dangerous in the beverage industry because Molson Coors is one of our premier partners, and it's a strong relationship for us. We've got some great partners in the insurance space, and being able to look in and see how they come to market and what their KPIs and business drivers are, and understanding their business and how we can support them in that is what I think keeps this position really fresh. And marketing in general is that you get to really get across different marketplaces and different businesses, and then all of that through a sports lens. Obviously, my background's in sports, and I think it's a passion point within people's lives that is such a difference from anything else that they interact with, that when you can combine those two things in the business, underneath the business of sport, that it just makes for a really interesting day, week, month, year.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you found your way into it. Speaking of backgrounds, Chad, I can't help but to give you a little grief. Hang something on the walls, do something. Get a little background. I feel for our audience. I mean, you've got that beautiful view of Lake Michigan. For those that are unaware, Chad's out of our Chicago office right there on North Michigan Avenue, right next to the Wrigley Building and the Chicago River. Couldn't be a better spot and location, but your views are spectacular. So
yeah, we normally have a nice look out towards Navy Pier, but I pulled the shades in order to get the lighting correct for the video.
There we go. Got it. Well done. So look, I appreciate the background, and I think ultimately, obviously, I'm glad you found your way into it. You've been a great partner over the years, and specifically as we think about the evolution of our media business and what you're overseeing. Tremendous amount of change, and there always has been, right? If you sort of look at our time together, but it seems to have accelerated in the past couple of years. And one of the words, and I hate to start out on sort of a negative tone, but the word uncertainty seems to be the word of the year in 2025 so far, at least. And so whether those are things outside of media that are coming back into media, or whether it's just within the media ecosystem of all the change. Uncertainty seems to be a common word. How are you dealing with that? How are you leading a team? How are you leading your brand and agency partners through a period of uncertainty?
So I would say two things, kind of where you started, in that the ecosystem and the local fan bases is changing and has changed significantly. And coming out of COVID and the way that people interacted with media and sport in general changed, with everybody being home, and increased the access points that people were using to get to the content that they really cared about. And so I think that's caused some evolution within our industry. And the great thing about what's been good for us is that our platform hasn't changed despite the distribution changes around us. So we've got a touch point to every single baseball, basketball, and hockey team in the US. We had that 10 years ago. I've got it now, and I'm going to have that 10 years from now. So the content that people care about hasn't changed. It's just the distribution and how they're acted, that pipe to that content has started in broadcast, went to cable, now it's come back to a cable broadcast stream mix. And while the access point has changed, the passion point that is someone following their fan has not. And I think that's what really has set us apart in the marketplace through all of the metamorphosis that's going on. And then secondarily, I would say, yes, the buzzword of the year, especially in an upfront conversation, seems to be uncertainty. Obviously, the current economic and political environment is causing brands to have concern about how they're going to come to market over the next 12 to 16 months. And, I think there's a couple of layers specific to media and upfront underneath uncertainty that are driving the conversation. And number one is that I think people are looking at how they're going to come to market, and there hasn't been a pullback from, I'm going to change my strategy. There's still, the budgets are there. I'm going to come to market. I understand that sport needs to be a key part of my overarching media mix and how I'm coming to market. But secondarily, I now need to understand what the current environment is and how that's going to affect how I'm interacting. So, do I need to address it in my creative? Do I need to shift back and keep more flexibility in how my budgets are allocated over the year? And how is that going to play with dollars that I'm spending now in the upfront and utilizing to get key platforms and access to different sponsorship items that I know I need? And then also, retain the flexibility that if things move or how the economy moves, I can still keep my weight in my media as active as possible when I need it. So I think that people are smartly taking a look at the year and trying to get an understanding of what they think is going to happen, allow themselves to have a little bit more flexibility to understand what I need to move now, what I need to move later. But ultimately, I would say in the conversations I've had with our agency partners is that they're not changing their plan. The budgets are still sitting there. They understand they've got to market their product and get their plans in place. It's just how they're utilizing it over the year and when they're going to allocate it.
Sure. Well, look, I think, obviously we've got reams of data to show that it's essentially like a flight to safety. If you think about our model and the idea that, I know we're in the baseball season, so you sort of project out to the fall, the NBA season, Knicks fans are going to be there in New York, Bulls fans in Chicago, Lakers fans in LA, and all the teams across the country. You know that. So as a marketer, that certainty has got to help you and your team get through what is an uncertain time in other areas and other parts and sectors of the ecosystem. Let's shift gears a little bit away from that sort of scale perspective maybe, and just talk about the engagement that comes and sort of how you guys and how your team, how you in particular are expressing to a marketplace the importance of engagement at a time when there's a lot of passive viewing experiences and what that does for a brand marketer when they lean into that.
I would say in general, the thought around fandom and what a fan is looking for and how they're interacting with their teams is at the heart of what we do, and the value that we bring to a brand as they're trying to look at sports and what their initiative should be. People know and have established their fandom at an early age, right? I've been a Cubs fan since sitting and watching it with my dad when I was, I don't know, 10, 11. And I've established that pattern and understand and have a connection with the Cubs here in Chicago that is not replicable in other different genres or places within sport. And even if there are certain levels of fandom that if I'm a baseball fan, I'll eat and I will drink and bring as much as I can into my viewing but it's not the same as when I'm watching that Cubs game.
Yeah.
And that interaction is different, and the ROI that a brand can see on the back end of inserting your message and into that relationship that is such a one-on-one thing between me and the Cubs, that's really where the value changes. And outside of the reach that you can get, or maybe using sport as a reach vehicle versus reaching that person in a time when they're leaning in, they're engaged, and they're passionate about what they're connecting with.
Got it. I bet, by the way, when you were 10 or 11 with your dad, you were probably only 6'4", 6'5" then?
Yeah, 6 foot in 8th grade, I think, something like that.
Okay, that's the normal thing. Chad, if you were, right, you had your opportunity and you could get someone to understand one thing about today's marketing environment, especially using media as a vehicle for it, what do you think that would be? Like how would you want them to, you got a chance to sort of penetrate the minds of the marketers out there and the brands that are out there, and you want to get one thing across about what they need to do, because it isn't just broken, right? You're talking about a lot about the ecosystem as well. It's changed tremendously. Every sport is on. Not all of them are created equal. How do you make an impact?
I think there's a couple of layers to that. There's obviously been a seismic change in the way that people are consuming content over the last 3 years, accelerated by COVID. What once was going to be a 10 to 15 year transition happened in 3 to 4 years. So one, I think there's definitely an opportunity for an understanding of how people are interacting and consuming their content. And then the layer underneath that, what they're doing from a sports perspective and how they need to utilize sport in this new environment. And the new environment is that it's hard to find people when they're interacting live. The live aspect of sport, and for me to have a message in market when I need it in market in a live standpoint, and I know that it's being received at that point, that's a huge aspect of what I need to accomplish and having that control. And then the content that I'm being associated with and the association with that content, and how can I take it past just a 30-second commercial unit and me putting my creative in someone and really forming a bond with that content and integrating my message into sports and how that message is being received. So I think that's the biggest thing is that you can find reach, right? There's a million impressions that I can get out on a digital platform through CTV or through streaming platforms. But is it effective? Is it going to help me move my sales? Is it going to increase my brand awareness? Is it going to do the things that I'm actually trying to accomplish on the back end and show my ROI? Or is it I've checked the box, I've reached X number of people, and I'm hoping that it'll end up driving sales for me?
I couldn't agree more. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, that impact is what is going to drive the difference. And again, in sport, not everything's created equal. So some things will deliver, some things won't. As far as let's talk a little bit different part of the ecosystem, your ecosystem in particular, and talk about streaming. So our league partners at MLB, NBA, NHL are in front of the House Committee right now talking about what is happening in streaming, and they're taking on some pretty pointed questions about distribution, shift of games into streaming, availability to fans, additional costs being weighed in. Streaming has become an important part of your ecosystem and your model. And it's actually been a benefit more than a hindrance, I think, to fans. But why don't you explain a little bit more about what's going on streaming, and maybe even take a bold statement and think about what it might mean for the next few years in front of us as far as how important streaming is going to be in the local consumption of sports.
I would say internally, the conversation that we're having with our team is that we're doing our clients a disservice if there isn't a streaming conversation as part of all of our plans. So if you look at how people are interacting, as we kind of mentioned through that pipeline, about 70% is still linear, which is a huge portion of our audience. 30% is coming through the streaming side of our platform. So if you're talking about trying to interact with a fan base and 30% of your audience is coming in through that distribution, you've got to address it. So that percentage has consistently grown year over year over year, and especially been amplified and increased over the last couple of years. So in general, I would say it's definitely a piece that we want to make sure that we're including and thoughtful about, and that we're talking in a video and conversation versus a linear versus stream, and it should be agnostic. I'm hitting this fan base and I'm getting them on both sides. From a streaming side of the audience, I think there's been some really great data as we learn more about that audience and where it's coming from. So one, currently our streaming marketplace is about 80% DTC. So this is people, this is direct to consumer. These are fans that are choosing to pay to access our games, which means, again, that they've looked out and found that content and they're actively pursuing it. Mm-hmm. And then number two, that 80% that they're doing, they're on for somewhere around 85 to 90 minutes a stream or an interaction. Mm-hmm. So not only have they gone to find it, they're staying with it. They obviously have gone there for a reason and are interacting into a long form content that I think shows the, you can say it's a passion place, and feel like everybody tries to use some of those buzzwords. When somebody's actively paying and then spending 90 minutes an occurrence, that shows engagement. That shows and proves out the things that numerically that we're trying to make general statements about. And then the last thing I would say is the audience is the audience that we would like. So it's one of the reasons that baseball, that, as you mentioned, and some of the other verticals are leaning so heavily into the space. Over the last 2 years, our partners have launched 23 direct-to-consumer platforms because they know that people want to access the content through those positions, and it's gotten us a little bit younger. Cord cutters, cord nevers, all of those people that did not come up in the historical, oh, I've got my cable, or oh, I've got my satellite. They want to interact differently, and they're accessing it through those pipelines. So I think that while we've held and still have that core on the linear side, our ability to offer unique or all access to every fan, however they want to get to it, is an important aspect of that the stream gives us, especially through the DTC.
No doubt. And obviously a growing segment, and availability is actually increasing, right? I think that's part of your message too, to marketers, but also just in general about the idea that, just a few short years ago, the only way to get it was through a linear feed, and then you had your authenticated streaming, and now you've got direct to consumer. That direct to consumer package is often packaged up into Prime or other areas of where you can access it for an add-on. So fans have certainly an opportunity to get their local home team games on a variety of different platforms. So good. Appreciate that sentiment. If you said like where you think it's going to go, do you see it overtaking linear?
I don't think it's an if, it's probably a when.
Okay.
And especially just from the usage type, because it's no longer, it used to be I was utilizing the stream when I was on the move, when I was at work, I was on my phone, on my tablet. It was another place for me to get it when I wasn't at home. Now people are throwing it up on the big screen. They're utilizing it's their primary access point at home and at work and across the board. So I think that is the technology and the ability to easily flow into the stream into the big TV has gotten easier and easier. It's only going to continue to grow that way.
You're on FanDuel, and there's a prop bet you can make. When does it overtake linear consumption? What year?
I still think it's, at a 70-30 now, let's say 2028, probably another 3. We've had over the last 3 years, we've seen growth consistently on that pace. I think it overtakes it probably 2 to 3 years.
Okay. All right. We're going to save this, and we'll go back and look at a later date. All right. To wrap up, a couple things, right? One, you have 6 primary offices and some folks in between across the country: New York, Chicago, LA, Dallas, Detroit, and Atlanta. What's your favorite office? Who do you like best?
I'm in Chicago, Chi-Town.
Come on. You can't say. You got a bunch of people out there watching that are going to be upset by that.
Yeah. So no favorites.
Yeah, exactly.
Each one. It's funny because I do kind of do a tour and bounce around. All of the markets are very unique to the area. Not to play into the stereotype, there's definitely an energy in New York that you can't get anywhere else, and the laid-back approach in LA is always appreciated. And if I ever lived out there, it would definitely be in a beach town. It would be my goal, but even in Atlanta and Dallas and Detroit have very distinct feels. I would say the Detroit market is a very proud marketing community. They're very forward in the fact that the value that they bring and the connection to the autos and the connection there is huge. Everything's bigger in Texas, and I also like country, so always fun to get down there and do some boot scooting. But I'd say all of them have a little bit different feel. But I'm a Midwest born and raised, so I can't go against Chi-Town.
Okay, last question. I know you're obviously an Illini fan, as you mentioned, passionate about your Bears, your Blackhawks, your Bulls, and your Cubs. Which one do you not want to be around people after they lose, and which ones get you most psyched when they win? One team.
I would say probably the Cubs is probably my lead from a Chicago standpoint. As an ex-football player, obviously the Bears are near and dear as well.
Chad, I gave you one.
Oh, only one? I would have to go Cubbies. First place Cubs currently. Okay. Go Cubs, go.
All right, love it. Look, Chad, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate the insights about your business. Appreciate the insights about your background and career. If people want to get a hold of you, it's chad.copher@playfly.com. Always available for a discussion as a mentor or as a partner. One of the best guys in the business. Glad to have you on the team. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Craig.